We now take a break from our Renaissance Fair costuming and cosplay content to bring you another fun D&D build. Well, not actually a break, because I thought, hey, why not go back to drawing things? It's been a while since I've sat down to draw something instead of working on cosplays, right? Drawing is going to be much faster than working on physical projects because it's easier and can be done in a couple of sittings, right? Wrong. I spent 7 hours on this drawing, which is way more than I intended, but it is honest to goodness something I am so incredibly proud of having done. I love the way the piece came out, and the story and character build that I'm going to talk about is pretty interesting too, so let's get started, shall we? I would like to preface this video by saying I am not a furry artist. I never have been. Animal anatomy, anthropomorphized or not, has never really been my strong suit. But anyways, when one of our DMs came to me saying, hey, what if we did a one-shot but it's all tabaxis? I don't think I have ever jumped faster to make character art. We did a one-shot which turned into a two-shot because we got distracted by a building described as a giant cabbage, which if you've ever D&D'd, even secondhand, you will know that that's pretty on brand for D&D and is not weird at all. But the plot of the one-shot slash two-shot actually happens in the same universe that Io, Terovich, and Stub exist in, who you'll recognize if you've seen some of my older D&D adventures slash party drawing videos. Although I'm not exactly positive of the timeline, I think they exist within the same general span of time. Whether it's completely coinciding time or just slightly overlapping time is a little unclear, especially since all of this takes place in the Feywild, and in the Feywild, as wisely spoken by my favorite druid Fern Calloway, time is a weird soup. From left to right, appearing before you in the form of fast, funky, fresh, loose sketches are Sven, Perseus, and Ivriska. Sven on the far left is a level 8 rogue and a level 3 bard, which means he's excellent at what he's good at and just flat out great at everything else. Ivriska on the far right is about the least Feywild character I could possibly have built, but she is all 11 levels into fighter, made for slashing damage and a lot of damage, and not an ounce of magic in her. If you'd like to hear me expand on these other character builds in another video, I would be super happy to. I love exploring character builds, and I especially would someday like to make a video breaking down the homebrew class that I'm using for Io someday. But for today's video, the character of interest that I would like to talk about is also the reason that we are all at the weird number of level 11 and not 10. The center character, Perseus. He is played by my husband, who is the only one of the three of us that decided to go with a cat pun name, which is truly a great oversight on my part. But Perseus is a tabaxi build that I have been hoping my partner would make for ages. But of course, it's a build that requires a character to be at level 11 minimum to get all the required features desired, and our D&D experience all have the unfortunate habit of either being short-lived due to scheduling issues or maintaining multiple low starting level campaigns that swap out every couple of weeks, making it quite a bit longer for everybody to level up. But if your group is better equipped for a longer running campaign, or if you're planning on doing a one-shot that is level 11 or higher, or you're just much more patient, I guess, than any of us, I might just have the weird build for you. And I say weird because I need people to not be yelling at me in the comments. I'm not here to teach anyone how to build the most efficient D&D character. I'm just here to point out some interesting combinations that are available. So, Perseus's build. It's 5 levels into Grave Domain Cleric and 6 levels into Wave Shadow Monk. Yes, this is an incredibly emo edgy build, which is why I draw Perseus the way that I do, but also probably why I very much enjoyed drawing him, because I live for it. Although, this is probably one of the worst set of rolls that I've ever seen my partner roll, and that is truly saying something. After modifiers have been added, Perseus's strength is 11, his dex is 20, constitution is 13, intelligence is 15, wisdom is also 15, and charisma is 12, which truly not a bad set of stats, considering that at the end of the day, in terms of skills, the only thing that doesn't at least have a +1 to add is if this character just had to make a flat strength check, which cannot be said of Ivriska because she has modifiers that are 0 or lower in many places. But let's get into the specific reason of why Perseus was built this way, and stay with me because it's a lot. At level 5 of Grave Cleric, you get a really fun 3rd level necromantic spell called Vampiric Touch. As an action, it makes a melee spell attack that deals 3d6 necrotic damage. And at level 5 of a monk class, you get an extra attack. So let's not think in terms of weapon. Let's just go very basic and say unarmed strike, which as a monk gives you 1d6 damage plus your modifiers. In Perseus's case, this is a 5. Now you can also expend a key point to do flurry of blows, which is another 2 unarmed strikes. So at the end of one round, expending everything possible, you have done a total of 6d6 damage, plus your modifiers times 3, which in Perseus's case would be 15, which means per round, the minimum damage that Perseus is able to do is 21 points. And Vampiric Touch allows him to heal half of the damage that he dealt with the 3d6 at the start. Alright, that was a lot, but I need you to stay with me, because that's just the basics. So here is where we start talking to our DM, because we are going to get a little bit technical. Now, not every multi-class is supposed to go swimmingly together, but I do feel like this one in particular should not have put Perseus so far behind Sven and Ivruska in terms of damage. Vampiric Touch is a concentration spell, so unlike something like Shocking Grasp, as long as you're holding concentration, Vampiric Touch doesn't go away until a minute or 10 rounds of combat have passed. And there is very specific wording surrounding the spell, stating that the touch of your shadow-wreathed hand can siphon force from others to heal your wounds. Do you see where I'm going with this? Unlike a cleric, a monk has a lot more opportunities to make unarmed strikes against their foes and consequently physically touch with their hypothetically shadow-wreathed hands an opponent to make an attack. So, technically, you could argue with your DM that for every single unarmed strike that you make, you would be touching the opponent and consequently activating Vampiric Touch every single time that you make contact. This can be interpreted a couple of ways. Either every time you touch, you get 3d6 necrotic damage, and every time we kiss, I swear I could fly, but in that maximum damage round that we talked about earlier, that would bring you to 15d6 rolled for one round, 3d6 Vampiric Touch for casting it, and a 3d6 Vampiric Touch every time you do 1d6 unarmed strike, and 2d6 for the flurry of blows. That is a lot of damage. And also, you heal half of 12 of 15 d6s that you rolled. That's insane. And at every single spell slot higher that you cast Vampiric Touch, you get an additional d6, which multiplies your damage to unbelievably high numbers. Now, granted, at this level 11 build in particular, you don't have access to any spell slot higher than level 3, but even as is, it's an incredibly powerful way to abuse a technicality in the writing. This route might be a little bit difficult to convince your DM to go for. Now, the secondary option is a much more mellow, alternative middle ground, I guess you could say, that might be easier to ask your DM for. Instead of doing 3d6 necrotic damage every single time you touch your opponent, you will remain at the 6d6 plus modifiers damage, but you not only heal for the necrotic damage dealt, but also the rest of the damage made by physically touching your opponent, which means you also heal for half of the damage done by all of the unarmed strike d6s as well. And in both cases, at this monk-cleric combination, you will only have 2 3rd level spell slots, so you'll have to be pretty careful when it comes to maintaining concentration, so do your best to not make Constitution your dump stat. But either way you handle the situation, you end up being one really strange tank monk cleric, because as long as you maintain concentration, you have auto heal on you, and monks tend to have pretty high ACs because of their mad dex stats, so more power to you. Now, that's a whole lot of fun right there, but let's get into some of the really tiny details about taking on this class and leveling it up further. Grave clerics have a really neat channel divinity called Path to the Grave, where you can curse a creature within 30 feet to be vulnerable to the next attack that hits it. If your next in line party member is super strong, that's great. But also, on the off chance that you're the next one to hit it and you somehow manage to convince your DM to go the 17d6 damage route, boy howdy does that creature have something coming for them. Second, the character's movement as a tabaxi is insane. They already have 45 feet of movement with just being a base monk. With tabaxi specific traits, they can use feline agility to move twice their speed until the end of the turn, giving Perseus 90 feet of walking speed. In addition to this, being a wave shadow monk at level 6 means you can teleport 60 feet in dim light or darkness as a bonus action, not even as movement, which means in the shadows You have 105 feet of movement just as a baseline per turn. That is, if you're willing to give up on that one unarmored strike for that bonus action economy. But the nice cherry on top is that you're a tabaxi, so climbing doesn't affect your movement speed at all, which basically means for a pretty significant amount of the map, as long as someone is connected to the ground in some way or another, you can reach them in one round and no one can escape the vampiric touch. Another cool thing you can pick up with this class is a 3rd level cleric spell called Life Transference. Now, I personally think it works better if you have a few more than 2 spell slots at level 3, but it is a beautiful complement to the vampiric touch ability. Life Transference is a spell that allows you to deal 4d8 necrotic damage to yourself and heal another creature twice the number of damage you took. It's not a concentration spell, so if you have vampiric touch up, it's not going to break your concentration. And I mean, if you have vampiric touch, you're healing out the wazoo, so you can afford to be a little bit loosey-goosey with your hit points every once in a while. And last but not least, if you have ability points to spare, you might consider picking up the Crusher feat, which doesn't really compound any of the damage too much, but since you'll be working almost exclusively in unarmed strikes, whatever isn't necrotic damage is going to be bludgeoning damage. And what the Crusher feat allows you to do is for every successful hit of bludgeoning damage, you can choose to move a creature 5 feet away to an unoccupied space as long as a creature isn't larger than you, which means for every bludgeoning attack, of which you will have 4 per turn maximum at the levels we're considering at the moment, you can move a creature a total of 15 feet per turn. Off the edge of the cliff? Sure. Away from an ally so that the ally can get an opportunity attack? Why not? Plus, if you crit with an attack that deals bludgeoning damage, all attack rolls against the creature have advantage until the start of your next turn, which is amazing for your party members. Granted that you have not already siphoned the soul out of your poor unfortunate enemy at that point. Okay, that was a lot. Hopefully I'm adequately describing the concept to you all in a more or less easy to understand way. I do always feel bad that I don't have a bunch of visual aids figured out to go along with the video that has a lot of very specific D&D terminology, and especially for this one because it's got a lot of math. And also I'm okay at math, but I did this math at like 1 o'clock in the morning, so if it's wrong, just bear with me. The point is, it's a lot of damage. Either way the math ends up figuring out, I think giving a monk vampiric touch is a really cool idea. It makes for some great flavor. Also, it's not like multiclassing doesn't come without its drawbacks. I think allowing a little fun with an incredibly powerful spell is well worth the weird multi-class route that one has to take to get there. But of course, I don't have to convince myself of that. If you're trying this out for yourself, you'll have to talk to your own DM about it. Having it specifically a Tabaxi too is just a movement thing. This weird class combo could work for whatever D&D race you end up choosing. Granted, high dex, strength, and constitution are kind of nice to have buffed. After all that, let me just talk a smidgen about the art process and how deeply I truly loved working on this piece. It is a little strange to have me so thoroughly love a piece that is composed entirely of creatures with fur. I'm not sure if it's because I took a pretty long break from making digital art since Art Fight happened, or if it's because I broke the drawing up into like 9 different settings, so I had a bit more energy to work on each of the characters, but I genuinely enjoyed the different texture variety that each character brought, and I was also very intentional about adding little details and repeating patterns because I wanted to give each character a little bit of their own uniqueness. But on that note, we've come to the end of our speed draw, and here's the final result of the Claws of Demise, or what I've been calling the Percanth pack because they're working under the Cat Queen Percanth of the Fall Court in the Feywild. I am so excited to have drawn them. Our DM said not to get rid of the character sheets since we might do future campaigns with them, which I am very thrilled about because at the end of the 1-shot/2-shot that we did, all 3 of the characters looked into the cosmic eldritch expanse and got some very strange abilities as a result of it. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this little break from the cosplay stuff. A lot is going on in my life right now, so I appreciate it. I appreciate you. Your support means the world to me. Let me know if you like these videos. They're sort of strange in the way that I don't really talk about the art that is on the screen and I just talk about cool D&D builds. This specific monk cleric is maybe not the most practical of combinations, but you know what? I'm never here for practicality. Well, that's not true, but I'm just here to build classes and characters that I think are fun, and hopefully it takes the pressure off of other players when it comes to them thinking they need to build the perfect character. Either way, I think talking about weird builds is super fun. I really enjoy doing it. Might make it a whole separate series whenever I have time to do it. But for now, thank you so much for watching. See you next Friday, where hopefully I will be caught back up with cosplay things and releasing more Ren Fair costume videos, but who knows? Not me.